Let's find out what did the pandemic mean for the more established bakers as most people turn to the oven for some comfort, including Karan Gupta, who is a financial analyst. Karan, what's your day job and why did you decide to bake bread during the pandemic?
I'm a financial consultant by profession, and I had a lot of time on my hands during the lockdown for COVID. So it was something to spend some time with, where you get the end result at the end of the day, or maybe in a couple of days. So yeah, and there was no place to buy good bread, so I thought I'd just make my own.
Are you going to continue baking for a while, or have you run out of enthusiasm? Will you sell commercially ever?
So I started, I think, 2 weeks into the lockdown. So it's been about 4.5, 5 months since I started baking. I still got my starter going, but just, as you get more and more into the lockdown, or as time passes, the amount of time that I've had has been lesser and lesser. So I haven't baked much in the past. I would love to, continue baking, provided I get time or I make time. But yeah, I would definitely love to continue baking. Why not?
Is baking soothing and meditative, or is it like chemistry with a definitive result which gives you comfort in these uncertain times? Or was it the bliss of baking your cake and eating it too?
What do I enjoy about baking bread? I love bread, so I love the end product. And it was a good opportunity to learn something about something that you really like. So for, like what goes into bread, the different kind of grains that you can use, what the leavening process was, etc. I knew nothing about it till I started. Now I know a little bit more than what I knew 5 months ago, and it was interesting. And so also while going through the process, you learn to appreciate, bread that's available in the market. You can tell which ones probably had a little bit more effort put into it than others, and you learn so much about it, and that's what I enjoyed the most.
5 tips for all the home bakers out there.
Baking is not something that you can just wing it, so make sure you're well prepared. You've studied you've studied and learned about what you're trying to bake. Second, make sure you have time and patience, because it requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of patience. Third, make sure you have all the ingredients handy. Fourth, make sure you have all the equipment handy. And fifth, keep at it till you get it right, or till you get to somewhere that you're happy with, because it does improve. Every time you bake a loaf, or you try it again, there's going to be some improvement. So just keep at it till you're happy. Don't give up.
Thank you so much. Well, baking has become so popular during the pandemic that some people have actually switched careers. Case in point, Ruchi Vesh, founder and creative director of Mia's Magic Company. Ruchi, before the pandemic, you were making perfumes. Why did you start baking?
So I was in Paris in 2011 with my husband when he was going to do his business school. I was actually studying patisserie at Le Cordon Bleu, and I was also working at one of the world's largest perfume companies, but baking has always been my first love. I came back from Paris and I worked at Elma's for a few months and consulted on the menu. I lost 5 kilos while I was working at Elma's. At that point, 10 years ago, there were a few things I didn't like about the food industry in India. The perishability of the products, the intense amount of wastage. And I think Indians didn't really embrace quality ingredients at that time. I also felt like the eggs in India looked anemic compared to the French eggs. So I was kind of depressed, and I said, you know what, I don't think I want to pursue this as a career. Also, a very great opportunity presented itself in the fragrance space, so I decided to pursue that. But when the lockdown happened, I tried to go back to work and see if I could pursue my consulting assignments, but that didn't work out. And I kept I bake when I'm stressed, I bake when I'm happy, I bake when I'm frustrated. So I started baking in the pandemic. And, I realized that I shouldn't get high on my own supply, which is why I decided to turn it into a menu, and I circulated it. And surprisingly, since I circulated it, I was besieged with orders. So I just kept getting one order after the other. I'm probably the only individual who hasn't watched Netflix this entire lockdown.
Well, Ruchi, that's great. Now you are clearly selling and getting lots and lots of orders. How many orders a day and how often are you baking?
I'm baking in the morning, I'm baking in the evening, I'm baking at night, I'm baking all day. I think I'm getting about 4 to 5 orders a day. I realized during the middle of the pandemic, I needed someone to do the deliveries. At first, I thought I would use an external like delivery service, but I realized that it was a bit scary to use an external delivery service. So I went back to just using my house driver because everyone was also feeling a bit worried, about using some external person. You don't know where they've been. The house people had been locked down with us, so it felt a lot much safer.
So would you say your baking business is more successful than your fragrances business?
No, I disagree. I think my fragrance business was very successful prior to the pandemic. I think things will also pick up now, but I will start. I am currently juggling two businesses, but I think I will figure out how to consolidate both. In fact, I have figured out how to consolidate both. I'm probably the only chef who has experience in fragrance and flavors, which is why I'm probably going to start working on more aromatic products like flavor enhancers or basil scented olive oils, or a really good quality vanilla extract, because I think that's not available in India, and you have to have an experience in both fragrances as well as flavor to be able to pull out the right quality of extract that you would need. So I'm quite excited about taking that forward.
Well, that's a great idea. If you could share 5 tips for all the other home bakers out there.
Okay, so I think the tip number 1, you should always use best quality ingredients from chocolate to vanilla. It makes or breaks your dessert. I reduce sugar in a lot of my recipes, in fact, most of my recipes. And I think that this enhances the flavor as well as it's slightly healthier, so people prefer the taste. I like to work with textures in my desserts. So like, how do you get the same dessert to taste crunchy and moist at the same time, or cold and hot at the same time? So it could be something that you should consider. Always read the recipe very carefully before you start to bake. Make sure you have everything pulled out on your counter, and prioritize your steps of baking. So if there's any proofing time, do that before. If you need to make ganache that needs to be cooled down, then do that before. So I think it's a lot to do with understanding your recipe and knowing how to start and where to start from. Yeah, I think that's it.
So it's amazing. If you're baking 4 cakes a day, which is 120 cakes a month, all these people, where were they consuming earlier, or has the pandemic made them slightly hungrier for desserts, or do they find comfort there? What do you think is the reason?
I was actually surprised at people's ability to consume sugar in Delhi. I was taken aback. But I think it's more comforting. It could be just boredom. It could be the need to try new stuff that's not easily available in the market. Because I think like most patisseries and bakers in India, like most shops, retail stores, they do a lot more chocolate-based desserts. Nobody really plays around with like fruit and stuff. So I feel like maybe it could also be a newer take on making food, like making dessert.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ruchi, and good luck with your business.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's find out how the bigger players are doing. We have with us Kazem Samandari. He is the executive chairman of Lopera. The brand started business as a bakery and pastry operation and then introduced the Salon de Thé, which are typical French-style tea rooms. Lopera has 15 outlets in Delhi and 1 in Dehradun. Mr. Samandari, how has the pandemic affected your business?
Like any other business. It was very dramatic at the beginning, but luckily we started rebuilding the business, and gradually we are going back to where we wanted to be. So yes, we have been affected in terms of personnel, we were affected in terms of regulations, in terms of lockdown, everything that you can imagine. However, we are proud that we have made quite some progress to come back to a normal situation.
That is good news. The fact is the pandemic has given rise to so many home bakers. Almost everybody is baking. Has that affected your business?
Not that we can measure it. in terms of operation, our delivery business compared to the pre-pandemic time, our home delivery and services has increased by a factor between 8 and 10, depending on the day of the week. So the home bakers, that's wonderful if they can satisfy part of the demand, but it has not affected us. What has affected us is the willingness of our consumers to go and to have dining, because they are still skeptical, but this one is also coming back much faster than what we anticipated.
During this time when people are spending a lot more time at home, have you expanded your menu, and what have been some of the best sellers?
Well, we have adapted our menu to the requirements of home delivery. Our best sellers remain the same. It is in the pastries. We have a product, obviously the eclairs, which you mentioned. Then we have a pastry, a very typical French pastry, a signature dish, which is called opera. We have the millefeuille, which is this puff pastry with different layers and cream in between. So this is on the pastry side, and obviously our macaroons, which are unique in India. Then on the bread side, we have our sourdough breads, which are very, very popular. Then we have our Viennese with our croissants, our almond croissant, and a range of other products. What is also very interesting is our savory products are also very much appreciated. These are things that are like light meals that you can have both in the outlets and you can have them at home.
How have you been spending your time during this pandemic?
All right. As you can see, we belong, because of our age, my wife and I, we belong to the vulnerable category. So we spend a lot of time at home, and we have minimized the number of times and the opportunities that we go out of home. But at home, we have a very strict program. I start my day every day, 6:15 in the morning, and I prepare breakfast, I go meditation, I do my daily exercise of 30 minutes, we have breakfast, and then we have the 8 to 10 hours of very, very hard work, followed in the evening by then some homework and also some leisure, if it's possible, to watch TV and some films.
So Mr. Samandari, how did the pandemic affect your numbers? If you could share your pre-COVID revenue and your revenue for, let's say, August 2020.
Yes, you know, the revenue in our branch is very seasonal. So an absolute number is no help. But what I can tell you is that in the early stages of lockdown, our revenues went to zero. And then gradually we did home deliveries, we opened a few outlets. So in the month of July, our revenues were roughly 50% of the comparable period of last year. In the month of August, we have reached 60%. So compared the same month of last year compared to now, in the month of August, we are achieving 60% of our previous year's revenue.
That's fairly encouraging.
Yes, between us, absolutely, absolutely. But we are hopeful. We want to think that with the festive season coming and with Diwali, people will find some comfort in also having sweets, bakeries, pastry items, and hopefully we can then reach something like 90–95% of our pre-COVID revenues.
Before we end this interview, do share with us some tips you have for home bakers, since everybody is finding comfort in the oven at home.
Trust your instincts. Don't be afraid. Baking is something that everybody can do, and I wish everybody good luck, that their pastries and their breads will grow and they will have no problem and nothing will go wrong.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Samandari.
Thank you for having me.